The act of farming created patriarchy and 98% of the world's problems. Recently, I've gone back and I've read Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. I've gone back and read Civilized to Death by Chris Ryan. I also have another work, I can't remember the name of the author, and it's called A Short History of Civilization. But the quotidian theme throughout all of this is that there's a line of demarcation in human history. You have prior to the advent of the agricultural revolution, which is about 11,000 to about 12,500 years ago, and then after the agricultural revolution, pardon me, and when you study human beings as animals, for 95% of our time as human beings on this planet, for the most part, we would have may have had like a matriarchy, or prior to a matriarchy, we would have lived in fierce egalitarian bands. And so when you make the shift to farming, some benefits came from that. The thing is with farming is that you were able to produce a surplus of food, and this would lead to a population boom. But one of the problems that come along with a population boom is that you exceed the hunter-gatherer groups of about 50 to 170 people. And once you get into 500, 1,000 people, 1,500 people, you start to see concepts such as private property arise. You start to see the ideas of passing down your property and your inheritance. You start to see the forming of small city states. We get into kinghood, kingdoms. You get into divine kingship, theocracies. These things are birthed from farming. And also, what was birthed from farming is zoonotic viruses. So, as we begin to farm as human beings, and this occurred around the Fertile Crescent, this occurred in parts of Eastern Europe, this also occurred, pardon me, in different parts of Africa. But one of the things that come along with that is the domestication of animals. And when you're domesticating animals, viruses that normally are relegated to that particular species of animal, it begins to jump from animal to human. We start to see, as far back as the Ionian period in ancient Greece or amongst the Hellenists, that there were epidemics. And so we start to see the growth of certain viruses that prior to agriculture were not amongst humans become a lot more prevalent. In that, the idea that women in certain societies are property starts to arise because you're trying to protect your property, you're trying to protect your belongings. And this is, once again, it's a far deeper take than this, but this is just kind of like a really superficial overview. But if we want to look at the catalyst for many of the ideas of war, manhood, womanhood, many of these things, the source of that